Welcome to Denoise Digital, where we break down tech trends for success. With the current AI hype wave, many people are looking for ways in which they can harness the power of AI to improve their software. So in this video, we're going to take a look at sentiment analysis and how it can be used to improve user experience. In this video, you're going to learn exactly what sentiment analysis is and how it works. You're going to look at how sentiment analysis can be used to improve user experience. We're going to take a look at a practical example using Python and the natural language API provided by Google. And we'll also take a quick look at what the limitations of sentiment analysis are to ensure you're using it for the right use cases. So what exactly is sentiment analysis? Well, sentiment analysis is a field within natural language processing that essentially takes a piece of text and tries to understand the underlying emotions expressed within it. To put simply, all sentiment analysis is taking a piece of text and trying to label that piece of text as either positive, neutral, or negative. And when you do that, you get a much deeper understanding of what the emotion and intention of that text is. And we can use this to analyze data from all different places, from the web, from your software, etc. How does sentiment analysis actually work? Well, there's a number of different concepts and techniques that are used in sentiment analysis. The first is natural language processing that we've already talked about, and that's about understanding the individual words and phrases, their meaning, the structure, and how they relate to each other. Machine learning algorithms are also used in sentiment analysis, and lexicon-based approaches, typically used on pre-built dictionaries that are particularly designed for specific domains or industries. Sentiment analysis can also be done on different levels. So you've got document level sentiment analysis, which looks to try and get the overall sentiment of an entire document. So think of a news article. You're looking to get the overall sentiment of that particular news article. Is it positive, negative, or neutral? Sentence level sentiment analysis, that's going a level below, getting a more granular understanding of the different sentiments within a particular document. And then where it gets really interesting is aspect or entity level sentiment analysis, where you get a much deeper understanding of the intentions within the text and also associating the different sentiments to different elements or entities within that text. So for example, understanding that the camera has got a positive sentiment, but the battery life has got a negative sentiment. So the good news is that you don't need to understand these concepts in any great level of detail. We can rely on third-party services to do all the heavy lifting for us. But how can sentiment analysis actually be used to improve user experience? Well, for me, there's kind of two key ways in which sentiment analysis can be used in this way. You've got direct, and this is all about implementing features that use sentiment analysis and allowing your users to use those features directly. So for example, if you've got a news app, allowing users to filter the news articles based on that sentiment so they can filter out all of the negative news if they wanted to. Or surfacing sentiment information in tasks or in support tickets to allow your users to filter down or prioritize tickets with a certain sentiment to get efficiency gains. So direct is all about implementing features that use sentiment analysis that your users get their hands on directly. Indirect is all about using sentiment analysis outside of your products to ultimately learn how to improve your products or business. And there's lots of ways in which we can do indirect sentiment analysis to improve UX. So one example is pinpointing problem areas. So you can use aspect level sentiment analysis to analyze App Store reviews or in-app feedback and try and work out what areas consistently get negative reactions. Very similar, you could use sentiment analysis to do social media monitoring around your brand or products or business and quickly respond to negative comments. You could do similar things but for your rivals as well. So identify areas where your rival or competitors have got gaps, and you can use that to inform your product roadmap. You could also do a similar thing with market trends. Look where the market thinks there is gaps in particular features or functionality or capability, and also use that to improve and inform your product roadmap. So here's a few examples of how sentiment analysis can actually be used to improve user experience. You've got direct, where you're directly implementing features that uses this capability, and then you've got the indirect method, which is using sentiment analysis to analyze data that can then help you inform your decisions around your product and software and business. But how can you actually implement sentiment analysis? Well, as we've previously said, you don't need to have a deep understanding of all these different concepts. You can just utilize third-party services to do all the heavy lifting for you. So the first thing we need to do is choose a service to integrate with. And there's lots of different services available. We've got the Google Cloud Natural Language API, which we'll be using in a demonstration in a moment. It's well-rounded, good accuracy, detailed sentiment scores, and it also supports multiple languages. You've got another popular one, the Amazon Comprehend solution, part of AWS. You've also got a similar offering from Azure. Then there's other non-cloud provider solutions such as Meaning Cloud and also IBM solutions as well. There's lots out there. Just go and do a Google search. You'll find plenty of ones that are available. Some of the things that you're going to need to consider when you're choosing a service is accuracy. Do you need to be absolutely incredibly accurate, or can you get general trend analysis? Is that sufficient for your use case? Cost is a really important one. These APIs can be very expensive if you don't utilize them correctly. Language support, obviously it needs to support the languages that you use in your particular use case. And also whether you need any customization. Do you need to be able to configure it or tweak it to better understand specific industry jargon? The easiest way to choose the service to integrate with, though, is just go with the provider that you're most familiar with. So if you're already using AWS, use the AWS offering. If you're already using Google Cloud, use the Google Cloud offering. Same for Azure, etc. It's going to be much easier to integrate it with your other services and your other systems if it's already part of that particular ecosystem. So now we're going to take a look at an example. We're going to do a code demo. We're going to write a simple Python script that interfaces with the Google Natural Language API, and that'll allow us to get a much deeper understanding of how sentiment analysis works and how the actual integration part works as well. Firstly though, if I could ask you to take 3 seconds to like and subscribe, that helps tremendously to ensure that the YouTube algorithm gets this content to as many people as possible. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your time. And now onto the code demo. So this isn't going to take very long at all. It's a very, very simple application, but hopefully it'll give you a much better understanding of how to interface with these systems. Before we get started though, if you head over to the original blog, you'll see that some prerequisites that you need to run through. I'm not going to do this as part of the video because it's really not very interesting. It's all about setting up a Google Cloud account, installing the SDK, authenticating your device to be able to access the API, and installing any other dependencies, etc. So follow those instructions, and once you've done that, you can head over to your editor. I've already gone ahead and created a new file called analyzesentiment.py. So let's build a simple script that allows us to send some text to the Google Natural Language API. So first of all, we're going to import a few libraries. The Language V1 library, which is what we're going to use to actually interface with the API, and then we've got this argparse library, which allows us to parse input from the CLI. In this example, we're just going to create a simple CLI application that allows us to pass the text to be analyzed to it via the CLI. Obviously, in a real-world scenario, in an actual implementation case, you probably aren't going to be building a CLI, but this really is just a simple way to illustrate how to interface with this API, analyze results, and understand what those results mean. So with that, first of all, we're going to add the code that allows us to take that input from the CLI using an argument of --text, parse that, and then that stores it in the args variable. The next section is instantiating the Natural Language API client. So we're simply taking the input that's passed in by the CLI argument. We are then creating a document, specifying the content of that document to be the text that's passing from the CLI, and then we make a request to the Natural Language API with that document, and then we store the results in the sentiment variable. Then we're just going to output the result of that request to the console, and then we should be able to see some results. So assuming that I've got this correctly, I should be able to do Python analyze sentiment, specify some text to analyze. So let's do, I really like the weather today. That's then making a request up to the Google Natural Language API with the input text that we specified, and we can see we've got some results back. So we can see we've got a score of 0.89, which is considered to be very positive, and we've also got a magnitude. So what do those different values actually mean? So the score that we're seeing here, that signifies the entire document's intent, and that can range from -1, which is considered to be strongly negative, and 1.0, which is considered to be strongly positive. And then the magnitude, that's trying to signify the overall strength of the emotion within the document. So we can look at some other examples to try and get a better understanding of what that means. So for example, I had an amazing meal last night. Honestly, the main was fabulous. The service wasn't great though. So if we analyse that, that's going to give us an overall score of 0.4. So that's about in the middle, and a magnitude of 2.59. So the reason for this is the fact that obviously there's lots of positive sentiment within this sentence. You can see that I had an amazing meal last night. The main was fabulous. The service wasn't great though. So the overall sentiment, the score of 0.4, means that we've got some positivity, some negativity, so it's quite a mixed result. So that some of the negativity cancels out some of the positivity, so 0.4. But the magnitude is suggesting that there's quite a lot of emotion in there. So we've got like 3 elements of sentiment within there, which is why we've got a higher magnitude. We can do another example. So if we do something that's not got much sentiment associated with it whatsoever, so something really, really mundane, simply the meeting is at 1 p.m. That's then going to give us a score of 0 and a magnitude of 0. You know, completely neutral, and there's also no strong emotion in there whatsoever. One final example. The meal I had last night was awful, the main was cold, and the service was slow. The worst part was how noisy the place was. So overall, that's obviously a very negative statement. So we can see the score there is 0.8, like almost at the end of strongly negative. But then you can also see the magnitude is still 2.5 because there's lots of emotion in that particular document. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer as to what these different values mean. If you head over to the original blog post, this is explained in much greater detail. There's a nice table that breaks down the different prompts and their results, so hopefully it makes it a little bit easier to understand. Another aspect of this demonstration is that we're only been doing sentiment analysis at the document level. You can also do sentence and entity level sentiment analysis with the API as well, but I chose just to keep it simple and just use document in this example. Hopefully this simple example provided a little bit more clarity on how to interface with these APIs and how they actually work. Finally, we're going to take a look at some of the limitations of sentiment analysis. Firstly, language is nuanced, and machines find it particularly difficult to understand things like sarcasm and irony, so you're not always going to get perfect results. A lot of the tooling is domain specific, so ensure that you're using the tools that match your particular use case well. And finally, a lot of the data that is used in sentiment analysis can have inherent biases, so this can often lead to skewed results. Thanks for watching this video on sentiment analysis. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, leave me a comment down below, or if you want to reach out on social media, this is where you can find me. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your day.